Welcome to the Combot Collective.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Robot Combat tonight and the Combot Collective for the first time in over a month. Bringing everything you want to know from the world of Robot Combat, from the heavyweight class to the flyweight class, from BattleBots to the live circuit, though not for the past couple of weeks, unfortunately. I am your host, as always, Sterling Brown, aka SterlingTXTG on Instagram, and I do want to apologize for how inactive we have been over the past 3-4 weeks. Probably the longest span of inactivity I've had on this channel for since we started in 2021. I really hate it. Obviously, I don't know how many of you people saw the very first video we ever did on this channel, the episode 0 video, where I would just start talking about everything I've done as a fan of Robot Combat and what I wanted TCC to be. And consistency and activity, even through off seasons, is it was a huge point for me. I wanted to make sure this is something that a Robot Combat fan could watch on January. They could watch in May. They could watch in March. They could watch in October, November, December, and there would always be content. And here we are, middle of a BattleBots season, no less. And for the last 3 weeks, we went silent. And I do apologize about that greatly. October was one of the most busy months I've ever had in my life. Not a bad thing, because I had a lot of fun, had a great time. I went to a lot of family and friend get-together parties for the World Series, for the playoffs, and we won the World Series. I'm pretty fucking stoked about that. It was all worth it. On top of that, Halloween, it's a big thing in my family. I was at the family home preparing a big Halloween party on the 21st for weeks. And then just after that, we were doing we were moving everything up front for Halloween night. And that was a big undertaking in itself. So honestly, I've been away from the house like half this month. And as much as it was driving me crazy, I am happy to be back. But I did want to be transparent with everyone that watches the Combot Collective, wondering what was going on. So I do apologize about that. We are going to be getting back into the full swing of things here. Hopefully 2 RCT episodes this week. We're going to be talking about We're going to be talking about Tournament 3 and 4 today, and then we're going to be talking about, hopefully, Tournament 5 later on in the week before the NHRL Finals kicks off. I guess we're just going to have to see how that goes. But here we go, y'all. I do apologize about RCT and TCC not being here. You guys can still expect everything that we want to do. We're still going to be doing Amidst the Havoc live streams this weekend. We are still going to be talking about Battle of Robots. Hopefully we can get 1 or 2 videos out before the semifinals event goes down. We are still going to finish up our discussions on Champions. We're still going to talk about the UK scene, Robots Live, Extreme Robots, Robo Riots. I know we're going to have to do a bunch of catch-up rundown videos on that, but I'm here to do it. And hopefully we'll be back on track sooner rather than later. But without further ado, we got a lot to talk about here. 2 episodes. Like I said, we are covering tournament number 3 and tournament number 4. 2 tournaments which featured R.D.C. robots in the final, but did either of them qualify? We're going to figure it out in a second. So yes, we're talking about those 2 episodes today. Next episode, we're going to be hopefully talking about NHRL September, and we are going to be talking about episode 5. Great episode. We got to see Alex Bales make her TV debut. We got to see Ripperoni. And speaking of Ripperoni, before we jump into these episodes, as always, the Combot Collective is brought to you all by RobotsRuinMyLife.com. They are the merchandise provider for numerous Robot Combat teams on the East Coast, numerous BattleBot teams, and robots which have qualified for the Golden Bolt tournament, such as Ripperoni and Shred It Bro. But today we are talking all about STARCHILD. And if you like STARCHILD, maybe they didn't have the best year this year. We saw them have a fun fight against Hypershock in episode 5, but unfortunately things didn't go the way of Brandon Zielinski, unfortunately. It is what it is. It is still a very fun robot. Hopefully we can see it develop a little bit better in 2024. But if you're a STARCHILD fan, you can pick up STARCHILD jackets, those sick bomber jackets. You can pick up t-shirts. You can pick up poker chips and stickers, all on the RobotsRuinMyLife.com website. And not only for the heavyweight robot, but for the smaller robots as well. You can pick up a Starfather shirt, the 30-pound version of the robot. You can pick up 3-pound STARCHILD shirts, or shirts for Omega Team, the parent team for STARCHILD, repping guys like Brandon Zielinski and Tony D'Ambrosio. And of course, also on this website, you can get P1 shirts, the robot which the team ran before they went over as a STARCHILD. And speaking of StarChild and P1 and all these other Omega robots, NHRL. The finals is coming up. Buy yourself some NHRL finals merchandise by going to their website, getting some House of Havoc shirts, a Milk Tank shirt, a Omega Team shirt, a Team Shredded shirt, something along that line. They have all sorts of amazing stuff at robotsruinmylife.com. And I don't know when this video is coming out, but I will have the link in the description below just to play it safe. We are doing one more, actually we have 2 more giveaways now, but we're doing one more giveaway to coincide with the BattleBots season. It is a giveaway all about StarChild. That's why I'm talking about it so much here. You get a StarChild poker chip, you get a StarChild t-shirt, you get the TCC and RRML sticker pack, all that in one nice big bundle for everybody. It's going to be awesome. Try to sign up for it if you can in the description below. Giveaway winner will be announced fairly soon after we get our next RCT episode out. Stay tuned for that, but now we got a lot of fights to talk about here, 14 in total. So let's jump into them right here, right now. And our marathon of tournaments kicks off with number 67 ranked Gigabyte versus number 116 Triton. And Gigabyte has had a tumultuous year this far, and it's been all built around the new regime of young drivers running it, headed by their new captain and driver, Derek Tran, with Camden Walref nearby. Gigabyte was one of the best robots in the world in 2020, but it really did look like a full-body spinning shell of its old self during the regular season. Numerous driving errors and internal disasters during fights plagued it big time, and all this eventually led to a 1-3 year for Gigabyte, missing the playoffs by a mile. The robot then missed Robo Games, instead appearing at BattleBots Proving Grounds for a weekend later this year to knock out robots like Jackpot and Doom instead. Derek Tran has shown some improvement driving this robot, but as we saw in this first fight, those improvements were still quite a bit away at the time of Champions recording. Triton, meanwhile, despite being a new robot, has followed a similar route, pushing through BattleBots and Proving Grounds. This robot is the spiritual sequel to the iconic and infamous Deep Six, who retired before this season to set the stage for Triton, a robot which was built to be like a horizontal spinning Deep Six, designed by Dustin S1 and captained and driven by Proving Grounds driver Bradley Hanstad. Triton did okay in his debut year, going 2-2 and finding itself as one of a handful of robots that numerous fans debated and argued should have been in the top 32 instead of some lower-seeded robots like Shatter. But at Proving Ground, after the recording of this event, things got real bad for his TCC ranking following a pair of brutal defeats to 2024 potential Giant Nut winner Manta, despite making some big-time changes to their weapon. Last chance for Team Overboard to get their robot out of the 100s here. We'll have to see how it goes. But first, as always on the Combot Collective, when we're covering BattleBots, we gotta talk about modifications. Triton ran its 80-pound compass arm, which was spinning opposite of Gigabyte's weapon for added contact. Plus they added a belt protector under their blade to keep Gigabyte's teeth away. And Gigabyte, meanwhile, ditched the new anti-vertical spinner shell for this fight, predictably, going with the classic full-body spinner shell it's better off known for. Full-on horizontal spinner versus horizontal spinner battle of 2 different styles. Both robots also sporting significant weak spots as well, with Triton having those smaller wheels, and as Derek Tran himself said, Gigabyte's mass being a huge weak point on that robot. And you know, this fight would mostly be Gigabyte's battle, but in typical Derek Tran fashion, at least for this point in his career, he kicked off this fight by driving directly into the wall right at the kickoff. But he did recover. Both robots still spun up to full force before initiating anything, and due to the geometry of the shell, just about every exchange went to Gigabyte in this battle. Big hits drove Triton towards the driver's corner, with only half of its drive working after about a minute of action, and Gigabyte stayed aggressive all the way through with a few jabs of its own before then landing a massive strike, one of the largest of the entire episode, which threw Triton across the entire arena almost. This ripped the rear bumper off of Triton and put it to rest, allowing Gigabyte to advance via knockout in 1 minute and 12 seconds. Tough ending for Triton, but we know this robot is seriously planning to improve for 2024, and Bradley Hanstad will certainly enter that BattleBots event with exponentially more driving practice than anybody else in the heavyweight class thanks to Destructathon, so who knows what might happen there. Moving forward, we have what may be the last appearance of the beloved Hammerbot, arguably the best Hammerbot in the world today, the TCC number 53 ranked Beta. After a disappointing 2020 season and a skipped 2021 season, The team recruited fellow top-tier Hammerbot Roboteer and Thor's Jason Marston to help, and the hits have never stopped from there, as according to BattleBots, who did the stats for me, much thanks to them, 72 hammer strikes were swung in its 5 World Championship fights in its campaign last year, a high for the legendary robot and a huge amount for hammer/axe bots in the sport. But according to Gabriel Plantigay, we may not be seeing Beta for quite some time after this, with him alluding heavily to Beta potentially being on the way out for a new or at least different robot from the team to have a shot in 2024. I guess we'll just have to see what happens. We did hear this from Gabe instead of John, so maybe something will change. I guess we're just going to have to see how it goes. But now on to a robot which has been the source of massive controversy in TCC's overall rankings, Double Tap. When you look at our top 32 on the list, you see a lot of big, reasonable names up high. Manta at number 1, Eruption at number 9, Quantum at number 16, Weber at 28, Ripperoni at 31, but then at 2-0 with a knockout and judge's decision, we have Double Tap positioned at number 27. Whenever anybody looks at this list for the first time, the first thing they always bring up to me is that Double Tap is way too high up. Spinner Wedge and the original Mallet Hammerhead, while Double Tap again ran the Macerator Blade while using their generative design shell for the first time all tournament after only using the black one in the exhibitions. The team also ran a drone mini-bot with the sole intention to kamikaze into Beta's internals at the rear. Maybe the most use we've seen out of a drone this year. This is very interesting to me. But, I mean, we all knew this robot was just going to be dinner for Beta. I love Double Tap. Its unique body shell, its bizarre but effective wheels, its fancy weapon and never actually used, its crazy attempt at a Shremek. I almost did a video on this robot on its own. But John Reed put it best. It was a large robot with a lot of weak spots to hammer, and John promised a damn good popping, his words not mine, and that's exactly what he delivered. Overall, Beta went 12 for 13 on hammer strikes in the battle, and every slugging blow mattered. Beta kicked it off 4 for 5 initially. Then after flipping Double Tap over, pinning it to the wall, the legend really went to town with a barrage of 8 successive hammer strikes, puncturing Double Tap like Shunk did the Panic Attack in Robot Wars Series 2. And just like that, it was a knockout to Double Tap in just over a minute in what was an absolutely harsh ending for Ostrich Air. I love what this team offers. They are so fun. It's a drone team. The military connections are cool. The Pixar connections are cool, but Kenny Florian did put it well. They're still a few years out from being competitive. I don't know if there's going to be a spot for them next year. I would love to see it because they've been awesome to me. Jonathan Colazzo has contacted me and what have you. We'll have to see how it goes for Ostrich Air. But from one alternate in 2022, we jump to another here in a robot which Double Tap actually defeated, number 125 ranked Slammo. I think anyone who watches TCC knows about the legacy and sometimes cursed career of Craig Danby and Team Danby. And things look to be finally turning to form with Slammo 1.0. It made top 32 at BattleBots 2020, top 3 at Robot Ruckus 2021. But when the team changed everything over to Slammo 2.0 and 2.5, things have not been working well at all. In 2021, it went completely winless, and in exhibitions against newer, unproven robots like Double Tap and Terratops, it was defeated in 2022 as well. We know a new era of Slammo is approaching with the recently seen Slammo 3.0, but this would be the Slammo 2 lineage's last hurrah after a couple BattleBots events and one Robotica event. Number 82 overall DeathRoll, meanwhile, is another world-traveled robot like Slammo, but with a much different career trajectory. It broke into the scene in 2016 with a rugged performance versus Shredderator, made a name for itself at King of Bots, and then at BattleBots 2019, it shocked the world by reaching the semifinals, defeating some big names like Minotaur and Quantum. COVID then prevented the team from competing for a while, but in 2022, the crew returned to the BattleBots rematch of sorts, and honestly, I forgot myself too until rewatching this episode a second time over. In 2019, when DeathRoll was at the top of its game, reaching the semifinals, in round 2 of the regular season, it challenged one Foxtrot, Team Danby's signature robot at the time, on the Science Channel of all places. Remember that? This fight was underwhelming, to be honest. Just under a minute long. Team Danby's reliability wasn't up to snuff in that era, even with a tuned-in version of Foxic. And this led to an easy victory for DeathRoll to push it to 2-0 at that point in the BattleBots season. And well, I guess the more things change, the more they stay the same. In what was the most refined version of Slammo at the time, a nearly unchanged DeathRoll again knocked the Danby bot out in under a minute. Slammo immediately showed it only had half of its drive working off the gate, and in 4.5 seconds, DeathRoll had ripped into Slammo, flipping it over and putting it to rest. Slammo tried to self-right, but it was still dead in the water, high-steadered on its own fork, allowing DeathRoll to then again tee up and land a coup de grace strike, which put Slammo to bed in 43 seconds flat. Thankfully, much like Triton, we know the future of Slammo does look at least a little bit better with the sleek new Slammo 3.0, but actually being able to lift robots successfully does still appear to be an issue. Hopefully we can see that better itself before things are officially set for 2024. Now we're on to number 117 Free Shipping versus number 78 Mammoth. Two veteran fan favorites desperate for a win in fight number 4 of the qualifier quarters. We have Mammoth, who after having an abysmal 1-5 year at BattleBots 2021 ended up turning things around quite a bit with the big bot going 2-2 this year and becoming one of the few 2-2s like Triton and Shreddit Bro to miss the playoffs completely. This on top of a missed RoboGames appearance left a lot to be desired for poor Mammoth still. But one team which did make RoboGames this year was, of course, teams in their robot photos presented on the website. Mammoth rocked the brand new Tegris Tusk Lifter, while Free Shipping ran its traditional fork to work alongside that wicked new vertical spinning disc, which has a surprising amount of pop. And this was an interesting one. Definitely felt like a quick one, but this was probably our most back and forth fight in this third episode's first round. Both of these robots were hyper aggressive early on, with Free Shipping struggling to find a spot to hit Mammoth, and Mammoth struggling to find any sort of area with purchase to lift on Free Shipping. Eventually, with just over 30 seconds elapsed, Mammoth would bust its large weapon belt, and as you know with fights where this happens, things usually go downhill from here, sadly for Ricky Willems. The just as exposed wheel modules on Mammoth were next. Free Shipping first worked on the left module, eventually killing it before then buckling the right wheel on Mammoth for a knockout in 1 minute and 58 seconds. Free Shipping advanced, but here's the good news. According to Ricky Willems, Mammoth might be more compact soon. I don't know what I should take from the "it might not be bigger, it will be better" comment, but it certainly isn't going to go anywhere. Shouts to my boy Chris Rose for taking the bullet in the heat of asking such a big question. But thanks to him and a booing crowd, we know we can expect more of Mammoth in the future, and that's exactly what we want to see with the biggest spot in the sport. Now, number 54 versus 46. We're on to the semifinals, and in what was easily the best fight this episode, we had a showdown between King of Bots All-Stars and former Chinese semifinalists with DeathRoll and Gigabyte. Fans constantly clamored for these two to meet, but only so many would have expected it to happen in this very arena right here. Gigabyte was the more modernized robot here, with it constantly being worked on every year, but the driving had been abysmal to this point. DeathRoll was a robot outdated by 2 years, which is a lot of time in this era of robot combat, but they had Australia's best driver and one of the sport's most underrated behind the sticks of it. It was a tech versus traverse battle, and lucky for both of these robots, neither had to worry about the other playing the ground game. It was a battle of big weapons, and this fight 100% showed these wicked forces off. Modifications, both Gigabyte and DeathRoll showed up looking primed and ready, with both robots showing little to no change from the round 1 outing. They just were here to kill, and this fight was phenomenal. Shades of DeathRoll versus Endgame, with a little bit of a different result this time. DeathRoll dominated the opening 30, not letting Gigabyte spin up at all, while DeathRoll just refused to let up, dishing out strike after strike to Gigabyte with a tour all around the arena. But Gigabyte eventually flipped the script when Camden Wallraff got it up to full spinning speed, delivering a trio of solid hits, throwing DeathRoll around in that classic bouncy ball fashion we all know it for, and it stayed alive through it all despite losing a part of its weapon module protector along the way. Both robots then whipped on a charging strike before going in weapon to weapon for a big-time DBZ level impact just right by Chris and Kenny, which threw both robots away violently. Gigabyte was flipping around like a coin, while DeathRoll landed in probably the worst spot remotely possible, a spot we've never seen a robot land since 2019, the arena bumper. We once saw Bronco get stuck here in a de facto out of the arena versus Hydra, But this time, the bumper actually did attempt to move. And despite its best efforts, it would only end up lodging DeathRoll deeper and deeper into its grasp, as soon began to permeate from the Killer Croc, leading to a very deflating ending for DeathRoll, and an electric ending for R.D.C and BattleBots fans everywhere. Gigabyte advanced, winning in 1 minute 51 seconds, with only one more win needed to even out its win-loss record. DeathRoll, meanwhile, put up a phenomenal fight, but unfortunately, bad luck found the one spot the Aussies robots' wild geometry didn't work out. It did the thing in a nasty way, and now it's on to DeathRoll 3.0 for this team. I cannot wait. I want to see what the refined version of this robot is. I want to see Australia in the scene, full front and center. I love it. Let's hope. Now, Gigabyte had some issues after this fight, but more on that later. Let's now talk about two all-time Roboteers here, which have won just about everything outside of BattleBots, finally meeting inside the battle box with their own robots. Gary Jin made a legacy in America as a control bot god, fighting with the aforementioned Original Sin, multiple Combot Cups, multiple RoboGames medals, over 10 total, making Original Sin the most decorated heavyweight of all time. But while that was happening, in the 2000s and the 2010s, John Reed was fighting all over Europe with robots like Kilohertz and especially Terahertz, winning constant live events, tag championships, and even a couple of FRA UK championships, which were the most prestigious championships in the UK while Robot Wars was absent. It was a battle between British legend and American legend, but not their first foray into the arena. As Chris Rose mentioned, during one of 2016's most electric battles, we saw Beta finally enter the box after over a decade of anticipation, challenging a nearly as anticipated Lucky, the truncated version of the iconic Ziggy with none other than Gary Jin behind the wheel for its debut season. This battle was an all-timer. I'm sure everyone watching this video has probably seen it twice by now, remembers the Hammer Time comment, remembers all of that. But for the first time ever, this was a battle between these drivers' signature BattleBots. And I was so excited for it. It's a shame it played out the way it did. Modifications here. Beta ditched the classic hammer to go back to its store-style hammer for the semifinals, while free shipping, just like Gigabyte and DeathRoll, kept everything the same from the round prior when it defeated Mammoth. Thankfully, not much damage is there with how that robot fights. And like I said, sadly, for this being a much anticipated fight against a pair of all-time drivers, I don't think this one's going to be remembered nearly as well, unfortunately. Short, but I certainly wouldn't call it sweet, especially for poor John Reed, who has had just the worst luck in these do-or-die battles this season. Both robots jockeyed for position before locking horns face-to-face, with free shipping out-wedging Beta, who landed its one and only hammer strike of the fight directly onto the top of free shipping. But this was all for naught. Free shipping then rammed Beta forward right into the blue square screws, flipping the British robot over with his axe in the downward position, kinda like, oops, sorry Ronan, kinda like that. And with it like this meant that the best hammerbot in the world could not self-right. A disaster scenario for John Reed and Jason Marston, who at this point had made it through all of BattleBots able to self-right, was now suddenly helpless with their robot literally directly in front of them. It would be a knockout victory for free shipping in just 51 seconds. One hit, one KO, and free shipping again had little to nothing repair-wise off what would be a rematch final here in the Golden Bolt brackets. Hopefully this isn't the last time we see John Reed's Beta despite the rumors. At the very least, we know that the legacy of his hammers and axes are far from over. Terahertz did recently compete at Robots Live, can't wait to cover that, but damn it, we still want more Beta. Think about it, Reed. Think about it, Gabe. Think about it, Jason. We want to see the hammer be a slammer. You know you do. But now on to our final. Number 23 ranked Gigabyte versus number 53 now. 3-3. Free shipping. Our final probably felt familiar to all of our BattleBots fans for obvious reasons. Not only because we had two former RoboGames gold medal squads, but here we had two robots which kicked off their 2022 seasons versus one another, and now one had to end the other's season too. Free shipping entered that regular season round 1 fight, debuting their brand new spinner module, while Gigabyte entered their round 1, debuting the new guard of Roboteers behind it with Derek and Camden. And while Derek and Camden surely wanted revenge and a clean slate by defeating their first foe, things got messy very fast following its victory over DeathRoll. During the barrage of impacts from the Australian spinner, including that big time last one, DeathRoll managed to hit the base plate of Gigabyte clean. The first time any robot has done so in Megabyte/Gigabyte's 20-plus year career, and the results were absolutely catastrophic. The show cut to Gigabyte outside with the team frantically trying to resolve one of the wildest lipo fires thanks to one of the batteries being rocked after the baseplate impact. This delayed the team's repair process heavily, pretty much day and night to what Team Special Delivery were dealing with, as the team was busy kicking their feet up and drinking slushies while R.D.C was deep diving the robot, trying to repair every little facet they could. Definitely not the situation you want to be when you're facing a robot which has trounced you literally 2 weeks prior. Modifications here, free shipping had switched back to its original style wedges, an interesting move considering they used the free shipping wedges in their first meeting against Gigabyte, who in itself made a change from that battle as well by keeping the OG shell on instead of the anti-vertical spinner shell. Might as well, it's already won them 2 fights in this episode. And you know what? I'll give Derek and Camden their credit. This battle and tournament run went miles better than anything that happened during the main championship season, but the results still stayed the same for our boy Gary Jin. Great box rush by free shipping opened up the fight, knocking Gigabyte back into the driver's side corner, and from here, free shipping buoyed Gigabyte for a second before letting it spin back up for another hard slam. And this was some pinball shit right here. Gigabyte shot forward from this full-on weapon-on-weapon collision, ricocheting violently off the arena screws before jolting forward into the ad board, absolutely shattering it along with its self-riding pole, which is never a good sign when your robot lands upside down. The battle box got seriously rocked, Kenny got docked on his paycheck again, and Gigabyte had no Shreemec. It was a true veteran win for Gary Jin, making it free shipping 2, Gigabyte 0, and a knockout victory which lasted 1 minute and 25 seconds. This one ended with free shipping doing some infernal victory spins while the battle box got a little bit of payback on Gigabyte, burying the full body spinner with pulverizer strikes again and again, as free shipping now joined the wild cast of robots such as Tantrum, Whiplash, and even Shred It Bro, that's still crazing me, buy their merch on rrml.com, as a Golden Bolt grand finalist. Shouts to R.D.C and Gigabyte though, but we still got a lot of robotic death company to talk about as we now jump into Tournament 2 here with the greatest of ease. Let's talk about Banshee versus Cobalt, number 32 versus 36. This tournament kicked off with 2 killer green machines, which have had very unique storylines going through this 2022-2023 year. We'll go ahead and kick off with a proud TCC subscriber, Team Small Robots, with their first ever 250-pounder Banshee. Banshee, a heavyweight version of the team's top 3-pounder Kelpie, was a much-anticipated robot when first announced, and actually a big reason as to why Manta didn't hit the scene a year earlier. Sadly, though, Banshee did not perform like Manta. In its first ever BattleBots season last year, it picked up 1 sole victory over the well-known Valkyrie, but then also turned in 3 losses to Switchback, Emulsifier, and even a fellow Flipper and Blip. This placed Banshee far out of the playoff picture, which prompted the team to then give Proving Grounds a try. And despite being 4-0 as it stands right now in Proving Grounds with wins over Max Paralysis and Overkill, 2 OG robots, it really only looked impressive in one of those 4 fights. I'm sure we'll see it get another year, at the very least as an alternate, but this performance would be important to it. But gosh, what a tough draw. Cobalt is no joke. Anyone who has followed Robot Combat or the Combot Collective over the last 2 years know I gush over this robot and know exactly why. Same reason why I'm excited for that Wayside 23 robot that looks so much like it. It's such a great design. This robot comes from a Robot Wars Championship team. It has won King of Bots Championships and sat as the only robot still on the road for a Triple Crown Championship after failing to get past top 32 round 1 earlier in World Championship 7. This may be the team's last chance at this opportunity, though. The current story we've been hearing is that David Moulds and Sam Smith, the original builders and members of Team Carbide, would be leaving the robot behind in the USA for its American co-owners of Robotic Death Company to take full control of, and with that, it would officially remove the UK/Team Carbide lineage from the robot. One of the 3 most destructive robots in the world likely only had 1 more shot at international glory. All it needed to do was win 6 straight fights to bring that glory home. Now, modifications. Banshee took a bold move here, No wedgelets, no forks at all, no plow, all in exchange for added UHMW. This team was trying to make this battle all flipper or all kill. Cobalt, meanwhile, went with 4 dual piano key setups at the front alongside with their serrated blade style vert. We did not get to see the skull in action at all during this episode, a bit of a bummer. Perhaps, though, the biggest modification with Cobalt would be its new driver, John Mladenik. As for the first time since Remar's All-Stars, Cobalt will be driven by someone other than the original builder, David Moulds. Now, John Mladenik is not an awful driver. We've seen with Derek Tran, he's one of the only real guys for the job when it comes to driving a full-body spinner. But with a vertical spinner monster like Cobalt, I mean, even John Mladenik said it, he's not nearly as aggressive. Cobalt looks like a shark. And you need to be a shark in the water when you're driving this machine, and this certainly was a massive narrative for the tournament in this episode. Certainly a thing I'm going to be touching on quite a bit, and in this first fight, we should have frankly seen a KO in around a minute 30, to be honest. Instead, we got a 3-minute judge's decision where despite Cobalt doing some massive damage to both Banshee and the arena lights, it almost lost by knockout on 2 occasions. After an impressive opening minute, Cobalt's drive got much worse with Mladenik dealing with moments of awkward gyro and kill saw slot drama, something he never had to deal with on robots such as Gigabyte. This eventually led to Banshee flipping Cobalt and nearly knocking it out twice within the final 70 seconds. Overall, Banshee went 2 for 5 on flip attempts, but that would not equate to what Cobalt had done damage-wise. Still way too close for comfort though, given the Shremek woes Cobalt has. Maybe in 2024, you guys should bring back that King of Bots axe. Thing worked great as a Shremek. Just food for thought. Moving on here, though, our second qualifier for quarterfinal was a battle between 2 robots which drew quite a few very interesting parallels. Number 137 Jackpot and number 141 Big Dill are 2 triple-digit ranked green West Coast vertical spinners armed with lifters as a secondary weapon. Both these robots also went on excursions in 2023, with Big Dill showing up at RoboGames and Jackpot making multiple trips to Proving Grounds just down the road. And despite differing records in World Championship 7, these 2 robots found themselves in similar positions entering Champions, with Big Dill finishing 1 and 3 but sneaking into the playoff discussion with a very impressive quality of fights, while Jackpot barely snuck into the playoffs after a underwhelming 2 and 2 year, only to be the first robot eliminated from the playoffs in a knockout versus Witch Doctor. These 2 robots then split the different paths this year, but to minimal success. Jackpot at BattleBots Proving Grounds faced robots such as Bloodsport and Gigabyte, putting together only 1 win with 2 losses while delivering some exciting fights. Big Dill, meanwhile, entered RoboGames without the vertical spinner attachment and also finished 1 and 2, getting 1 win on King Crab before losing to Whiplash and, of course, Manta. 2 robots with similar trajectories through 2 years meeting here. Only one could advance onward. Modifications time. Big Dill brought out their Dark Forces minibot Nacho Supreme alongside their multi-fork configuration with the small but effective Rooster blade. Jackpot, meanwhile, ran no wedges up front, but instead used the all-plow and lifter setup while running the heavy Black Heart blade. Apparently the configuration the team intended to use all tournament to keep their championship run simple. Now, there's something I gotta say with this episode that drove me absolutely nuts as a person who has to write these scripts. And that's that almost every fight in this episode ended in a judge's decision. That stuff is hell for me to take notes and properly to recap on, but here we go anyway. Good enough start by the Pickle here. Impressive box rush and some good strikes, but Jackpot quickly answered back with a lifting attack of its own, which followed into a strike which killed Big Dill's weapon just a minute in, alongside part of its drive. Big Dill did have a couple more big moments of aggression, with fits of control and even a near suplex at one spot, but for the most part, its minibot Nacho Supreme was stealing the show from here with surprisingly aggressive attacks on Jackpot. In the end, though, Big Dill was just a bit more aggressive, but in the sport built on damage, the judges just could not ignore the smoke coming out of Big Dill and all the damaged portions on the Pickle, from the bent lifter to the busted weapon to the thrashed armor panels, and this would allow the hometown hero a judge's decision win. It may have been a 1 and 4 year for Big Dill, but just like Fusion and Emulsifier, record aside, it put together some electric fights this year, and in my opinion, regardless of what has happened outside of BattleBots, it has locked itself in for a spot in the 2024 championship, in my opinion at least. Next up, this one I was so excited for on paper because given our TCC overall rankings, this was one of our most even matches we've had yet in round 1, with our number 118 and 119 both meeting inside the arena, both boasting similar records at 1 and 3 after missing the top 32, now meeting for placement here in the Heat semifinal spot on the line. First off, we have the much older robot here. In fact, the oldest robot in this entire bracket, Team Logicom's Captain Shredderator, made by my pals at the Nabe family. In 2021, things were really looking to be a new era for the captain. It defeated the multi-bot Jaeger, but perhaps more impressively, it defeated the one and only Tombstone in week 1, leading to a great round of 32 showdown between it and Rotator. This year was not as fun though for it, sadly. After a tough-to-watch comeback victory by it in round 1, it was 3 straight losses to the hands of 3 playoff robots in Quantum, Jackpot, and of course, Riptide, who caused them so much unnecessary trouble. Good lord. The team has bounced back though. They're here for Champions, and with a new and improved era of Shredderator on deck, maybe things will change soon for it. On the other side of the battle box is a robot genuinely trying to establish a massive legacy for its career early on. Emulsifier by all means kicked off its career as a number 2 robot for Bots FC in every weight class it debuted in. But over the last 365 days, every version of this robot had proven itself to maybe be soon passing over the legacy of one Shatterin knockoff White. Emulsifier had an impressive NHRL campaign in the 30-pound class during 2022, capping the wild year off by being crowned that season's NHRL annual featherweight champion after winning the December finals. Earlier in the year, Emulsifier qualified itself for another finals this year, but while all that was going down, the 250-pound version of the robot was tearing things up the best it could inside the battle box, kicking off its big bot career with one of the best BattleBots fights in recent memory versus Fusion, and the hits just kept on coming from there. It looked strong versus Malice, though had some bad luck, took out Banshee, and then held its own versus Quantum. And overall, like Big Dill, found itself in the playoff discussion despite not even having a winning record. And after this solid performance at Champions, the argument that it isn't number 1 in New York right now becomes even trickier to make. But how are these robots coming into this 118 versus 119 battle? Shredderator ran its slightly newer dome shell with a big feeder wedge up front called the Talons of Freedom, scraping the ground so that it could out-wedge Emulsifier, who ran their anti-horizontal spinner Titanium Plow alongside that deadly vertical spinner. And this was an interesting fight. Honestly, it had shades of an inverted Shredderator versus Hijinks here with such an awkward comeback by Emulsifier, honestly. Absolute dogfight for the first 25, with both robots just ripping at one another's face with minimal give back. But then things got really weird when just after this, Emulsifier ended up losing half of its drive. Seemed like a perfect opportunity for the captain to attack, but with some defensive driving by Matt Bors, we were left at a standstill with neither robot willing to attack for a brief moment. But then Brian Nave scampered in with 4 more face-to-face strikes, which of course, in typical Team Logicom fortune, ended up crippling poor Shredderator. The full-body spinner had lost its spin, and from this point forward, the drive would just get progressively worse and worse, while Emulsifier suddenly became a one-treaded aggressor, eking its way into a judge's decision victory, taking it right from the hands of Team Logicom. Heartbreaking loss for Shredderator, but I think the commentary was too harsh on Team Logicom here. Chris and Kenny acted like they weren't going for the kill at all, but I really think they did the best they could with the situation handed. Emulsifier was in the perfect corner to take towards a turret-style defensive driving tactic, and Shredderator was the worst robot for that position because it either goes into the weapon or it hits the side, which throws it into the wall like we just saw versus Gigabyte. Not a good move. Team Logicom did the best with the situation in my opinion, but unfortunately bad luck still lives with this team as Emulsifier moved on here. Finally, in our last round 1 battle, we had a meeting between 2 non-spinners which both sat as bottom feeders in BattleBots back around 2016 to 2018, but one here has blossomed while the other still is on the road of glory. We'll start with the latter here and talk about the original MIT robot Overhaul, currently number 119 ranked on the Combot Collective. Overhaul in the first reboot era BattleBots Championship really turned some heads by providing the returning Donald Hudson with 2 electric battles en route to the quarterfinals, where it was halted by the eventual champion Bite Force, and from here it's been a downward snowballing tumble. In 2016, it was set screwed by the Britbots. In 2018, it was outclassed by the Spinners. In 2021, the new design was unproven and struggled. But in 2022, things look to finally be on the come up. After going 1-0 at Robotica that year, Overhaul kicked off BattleBots 2022 with a shock victory over promising newcomer STARCHILD. All Overhaul needed after this was one more convincing victory over another machine to solidify itself as a robot destined for the playoffs for the first time since 2016. But it then lost 3 straight, the Claw Viper, Cobalt, and Shredded Bro, leading it to miss another postseason completely, and now it was up to the GravyBot Nation to excel in Champions instead. Things have been going much different for Lucky, though, who after numerous number 100 plus ranked robots in this episode, we now jumped over to a robot miles above the rest, literally sitting at Lucky number 7 on our overall rankings. After a promise in 2018 at the Desperado Tournament and Robo Games, we thought a new era of Lucky was on the horizon, but then the robot just sort of regressed to the mean in 2019 before skipping 2020 altogether because of COVID. In 2021, though, things changed huge for Canada's CM Robotics with the acquisition of the one and only Matt Olson, who has made the Punch Flipper a monster in the sport over the small span of 2 years. The champion RC car driver led Lucky to its first playoff since 2016 in 2021, then did it again at BattleBots 2022 before continuing this impressive run by reaching the top 8 at RoboGames 2023. Lucky may not be the most discussed robots in the greater scheme of the sport, but it has been sneaky dominant lately, only losing to some of the biggest names in the game like Mad Hatter, Hypershock, and Cobalt. Still looking for that big piece of hardware though. Maybe they can get the Golden Bolt. Let's talk modifications real quick. Overhaul ran the setup we see in its team photo. No gimmicks, just a lifting configuration, while Lucky, Lord of Wild configurations, added some top armor alongside 2 wedges at the front for this round 1 battle. The fight started off very strategic, with nearly all of minute 1 not seeing any offense outside of a couple near lifts by Overhaul and 3 missed flips by Lucky. But then in the driver's side corner around a minute in, offense really started to kick in for Lucky, with it getting a strong spiking flip to kick off some real action here. And the slippery Overall landed on its wheels, but it did lose a drive belt in the process, leaving it hindered and prone for an absolute barrage of flips by Lucky after the fact. 7 in total, including a huge one which threw Overhaul into the upper deck for a moment. Good defensive driving by Charles Guan kept this fight close enough though. Lucky was kept to only 7 flips and 16 attempts thanks to Overhaul being so damn slippery. And it even managed a couple of near lifts, though I do worry if the clamper even worked for this fight. I feel like I didn't see it go down once at all during the battle itself. In the dying minute, though, Lucky began to smoke and lose half of its drive, starting to shrivel away as it ended up being saved by the bell here. Lucky just barely advanced to the Heat Finals on our 4th straight judge decision of the episode. Sorry, Overhaul. Even the non-spinners are getting it now. That sucks. But now, with 3 fights left, we're on to the second episode's semifinals here. We kick off with Emulsify number 93 versus Cobalt number 21. A vertical spinner from the UK with championship pedigree versus a vertical spinner from the US with championship pedigree. Cobalt certainly had the weapon advantage, and it certainly had the drive advantage, not having to worry about exposed wheels or treads. But all the X factors, in my opinion, led myself to believing that we could have been in for a serious upset between Cobalt and Emulsifier here. 250-pound Emulsifier already had a history with King of Bots winning competitors such as Quantum and Shredderator. 1 loss, 1 win. Maybe 3rd time would be the charm here for Emulsifier, who much like Banshee decided to say, fuck all wedges and forks, we're going weapon only, trying to take advantage of the maneuverability and reach advantage Bots FC had in this battle. Cobalt, meanwhile, kept its blade vertical spinner and had moved over to a new set of piano key wedges, one that encompassed more of the robot's front, I would say. And we knew this would be a thunderous fight. 2 fuck-off verts in 1 battle always makes for a quick and/or epic showdown. And finally, we had 2 robots not making the full 3 minutes. A knockout! I know, shocker. Opening minutes saw both robots exchange jabs while ripping small parts off of one another, while Cobalt drove way too conservatively and Emulsifier drove way too aggressively. So out of control and aggressive, in fact, that the first real strike of the fight would be from a wild charge by Emulsifier, where it drove itself up Cobalt's wedge, allowing the UK robot to send Emulsifier flying while ripping a tread clean off. Emulsifier's drive, though, shockingly fine at first, but when another tread came off shortly after, the crab walking would soon commence, with even more vile offense from Cobalt following. This allowed the anxious, very damaged, but very in control Cobalt to finish the job with a hard strike to the outer corner of the box, dumping and dispatching Emulsifier for a KO in 2 minutes flat. A better performance for John Mladenik, but still not perfect yet. But that's one semifinal down. Now, in perhaps the most Vegas-themed fight in robot combat history, taking place in none other than Vegas with a hometown robot in the box, we are getting Lucky versus Jackpot here with a number 116 versus a Lucky number 7 battle taking place over 100 degrees of separation. That is kind of insane. And honestly, one of the best fights we've seen in Champions thus far, with honestly a very questionable judge's decision. I'm shocked it didn't get appealed. On one end, we have Jackpot, who made some serious internal changes between this fight and the Dill fight to make its weapon spin up quicker. And on the other end, we have Canada's top robot and maybe a top 3 flipper in the world, Lucky, another robot who, just like Big Dill, ran the table at RoboGames this year a bit better than its West Coast compadre with the aforementioned top 8 run. This was certainly a step up in challenge for both of these robots compared to their 1 and 3 opponents in the quarters, really bringing a playoff feel to this battle here, with only one of these robots able to move on to a big match, a potential rematch for Lucky's sake, in a final battle against Cobalt. Now talking modifications, just like Jeff Waters mentioned before the event even began, same Jackpot configuration all the way through the tournament, but we did get to see Ace return for this fight while Lucky brought out their wheel protecting bumper again to go alongside a 4-fork setup we've seen the team use numerous times before at BattleBots and at RoboGames. This battle, apparently a rematch of sorts, with Jeff Waters and Matt Olson having a history of RC racing in the past versus one another, delivered big. But perhaps nobody in this fight delivered more than Jason Wood's veteran mini-bot, Ace. With a little help from the Killsaw slots, Ace had Lucky pinned and prone just 30 seconds into the fight, set for Jackpot to tee off and deliver a vicious grinding strike to open the fight. Ace then reassumed the position and really allowed Jackpot to establish an early lead after a dominant opening minute. Minute 2, though, saw Jackpot immediately get rammed and flipped over, and despite a quick self-right, things suddenly became really bad for Jackpot after a slam in the corner took out both Jackpot's weapon belt and the mini-bot Ace. This left Jackpot as a box on wheels with a weak lifter and an easy target for Lucky. But Matt Olson really struggled to land flips at first here, kicking the fight off 0 for 6 on attempts, but after a series of pins in the outer corner, we would see a pair of solid flips against Jackpot at the expense of Lucky's drive, unfortunately. After flip number 2, smoke began billowing out of Lucky from just about everywhere, while part of its armor was bent inward, killing Lucky's drive as the fight ended with the Canadian flipper holding all weapon and no drive, while the Las Vegas spinner had all drive and no weapon. A true tale of two halves here, but in my opinion, the judges made a poor call here, though it was very close, I can't deny. The judges went split, reasonably, with Fawn Davis being the only one agreeing with myself, deciding for Lucky here. Overall, it was an all 6-5 decision, and the only real X factor I can see deciding this would have had to have been Ace's effectiveness early on, and the fact that Lucky went 2 for 9 on flip attempts. Very uncharacteristic from Matt Olson. In fact, together, I believe, quick math in my head here, it went 9 for 24 in this tournament, flip attempts. Not terrible, but still, I feel like we've seen Lucky do a lot better in the past. We know Matt Olson's a fantastic driver. Mark Demmer's a fantastic captain. They're probably going to stay a top 10 ranked robot for the rest of this year. But you can't help but wonder what more could have been done if this robot could have won maybe 1 or 2 more fights. Maybe it could have been a top 5 robot, but it stays at number 7 for now. But now, on to the finals. Number 14 ranked Cobalt and number 92 ranked Jackpot, whose tournament runs in their qualifier tournament conclude the same way they kicked off, with both of these machines challenging yet another killer green robot. Here we have 2 robots who, despite having a similar concept being 4-wheel drive verts, cannot be more different with their history, concept, and pedigree. Cobalt was a spinner and axe combo, which has since become just a vert. Cobalt started off as just a vert and has since become a lifter-spinner combo, getting better with the lifter every single fight we have seen it use it in. Cobalt comes from not one, but two championship winning teams with major Robot Wars and Robo Games championships on their mental, while Jackpot still runs off of the bot on a budget moniker, still holding on to 0 major championships with what was an underwhelming year on its belt before this tournament run right here. Now both of these robots had just one more fight to go before potential rematches with stars like Saw Blaze and Endgame, or potential new showdowns versus underdogs like Free Shipping and Shredded Bro. One thing is for certain though, and that is that X Factors were once again in play here. On one end, we have a Jackpot which had been absolutely battered and bruised through 2 insane back and forth judges' decisions, and on the other end, we had John Mladenik on his maiden voyage with Cobalt, shaky behind the wheel, hoping that weapon can take it all the way to a potential Triple Crown honor. Talk about modifications one more time here. Jackpot returned again unchanged, with Ace shockingly enough making a return for this battle after getting knocked out versus Lucky. Cobalt meanwhile also entered unchanged from round 2, serrated blade on alongside the piano keys. And, I brought up that eventually John Mladenik's experience working with quicker robots and gyro forces may end up cursing him, and that's unfortunately what exactly we had here in what ended up being a fairly anticlimactic final between these green killing machines. In a tournament where floor steams and kill saw slots were seemingly mega cursed, with Cobalt, Big Dill, Lucky, and even Shredderator all getting stuck on the floor in various occasions this episode. This one kicked off with Cobalt getting caught on the floor momentarily, forcing John Mladenik to make an incredibly bizarre near 360-degree turn, which allowed Ace to again get under a robot, prepping it perfectly for Jackpot to once again land the perfect strike on its opponent. You couldn't have gotten more of a perfect strike on Cobalt. Jackpot really hit the jackpot here, hitting the sweetest of sweet spots on the Brit spinner, lodging right through Cobalt's armor and going directly into its battery compartment. Within seconds, we were seeing absolutely monstrous smoke and flames, which rivaled the likes of Red Devil versus Witch Doctor inside the battle box. As in this fire and flames-filled arena, Jackpot remained lodged inside of Cobalt for well over a minute, as both robots aggressively drove all over the arena, breaking apart at last during the fight's halfway mark, where Cobalt, shockingly enough, was still working, still resilient, and was able to re-engage, even managing a small hit to both Jackpot and Ace. But again, the kill saw slots reared their ugly head here and halted Cobalt again abruptly, knocking it out this time as Jackpot picked up a crazy knockout in 2 minutes and 18 seconds. I guess it's fitting that this Robot Combat Tonight episode featured both Robot Death Company machines making it all the way to the finals and choking, and it's mostly because unfortunately John Mladenik was driving a little bit more like Derek Tran in that last fight. An unfortunate couple of weeks for the team, who now have a ton of questions to ask themselves about 2024. Should John Mladenik really be the one to drive Cobalt? Really feeling like he needs to go back to his bread and butter with Gigabyte. He's one of the best full-body spinner drivers in the world, if not the best in the world after all. In my opinion, find a way to get Team Carbide back for 2024. Pay for that damn plane ticket. Maybe try and get Matt Maxim out of retirement again. I know he seems pretty done with the sport, but it's worth a shot. Or, shit, worst case scenario, have Derek drive Cobalt. He's driven vertical spinners before, such as Minor Threat 5 at NHRL. It might be able to work out. Maybe we can finally get a little bit of flack off of poor Derek Tran's shoulders. Congratulations, though, to my buddy Jeff Waters, Vegas Combat Robotics, the whole city of Las Vegas, and the Jackpot, who after this Champions Qualifier run and the following weekend versus Disarray at Proving Grounds, more on that in a couple episodes, Jackpot exits October with 5 more wins, putting it 3 victories over 500. You got to be happy for the team. These guys just keep on working and working their way through just about every challenge, and they always do great. But there you go, guys. 14 fights up, 14 fights down. The Combot Collective is back, and there's a lot to look forward to here in the coming few weeks. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I actually have work here in like 10, 20 minutes. I got to get ready for that. Thank you so much for watching the Combot Collective. We're going to be back. We're going to be doing a lot of heavyweight event rundowns for events happening in Russia, Ireland, England, USA, everywhere. Robot Combat Tonight's going to keep on going down. We're hopefully going to have Robot Combat Tonight episode 17 or 18. I forgot which one exactly out before the final Golden Bolt tournament happens. Well, I guess we'll just have to see how that plays out. And then we're also going to be doing a live stream amidst the Havoc this weekend. That's going to be good. A lot to look forward to. And you can find all this stuff going down on our social medias, which are also going to start getting active once again. We really need to do it. Be sure to check out our Instagram and our Facebook in the description below. Be sure to join our Discord server in the description below. We have numerous UK and US Roboteers talking and mingling in there. Numerous fans sharing their thoughts on the sport, their fan creations. And it's also the place where all of our TCC video news goes out first. And speaking of TCC videos, you're right here on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell icon, like the video, and leave a comment giving us your thoughts on Battlebots Champions thus far. Maybe even a little bit of constructive criticism. It goes a long way. We're always on the road for more subscribers, more opportunities, more chances to make the platform better for the Combot Collective as we want to get more active. November is here, December is here, the holidays are here, and we're here for it. We'll see you guys next time on the Combot Collective. It certainly isn't going to be as long apart. I promise you that. Y'all all have a great night.
This was the Combot Collective. Find us on Instagram and Discord.